to go. This feeling is swift like a river running through you. You make me go.
Hey everybody, it's Sharice here, and I am coming to you from my same little area, and if you read the title of the video, I'm just coming on to share like my miscarriage story and like my experience with everything and how all of that went. I probably look really tired today. It's been a long day. I am tired, but I'm okay. So where do I start? So on September 2nd, I started to have bleeding, and I thought that it was like from like my period, because that is around the time that I would normally get my period. It's kind of like at the top of the month. So I just assumed that it was my period, and my period is very regular, because I had the paragard IUD, which is a 10-year non-hormonal intrauterine device, and I had that placed after I had my son, and my son is 5, because after my second child, I was just like, I really don't want any more kids. And then as he got older, I was just like, oh, it wouldn't be so bad to have another kid. But I just didn't feel like I had any of the right timing or circumstances to have a child. Like, first of all, I was single for like 2 years. So I didn't have anyone to have a child with. I wasn't married or anything like that. But my husband and I, when we got remarried, we just, decided like, no, we don't want to have any children, any more children. So I kept it. I kept the IUD in. So yeah, it had been 5 years. I had the IUD in. That you can have for 10 years and not have any children. It's a non-hormonal way of birth control, which I like, because I kind of didn't like how my body was reacting to the hormones of like the pill or anything else. So I chose that. So yeah, back to like the beginning. So the first and second, so yeah, I normally get like a period the 1st and 2nd of each month. I began bleeding on September 2nd, which again, I thought was just my period. So like things were normal. And like I said, I was very regular. So I normally only get like 4 days of bleeding, 4 to 5 days of bleeding. But like by the 4th day, it was still very heavy and my cramps were very intense. And then by the 5th day, it was still very heavy and my cramping was very intense. And so I'm like, I must be stressed, or I don't know what's going on, but I'm still bleeding. But 5 days is not the end of the world, because some women have periods for up to 7 days. So I was like, maybe my body is changing and this is just what it is. So by the 8th day of bleeding, I was just like, okay, I don't feel right. Like, I was very emotional. Like, that whole week, I was like literally crying off of like anything. I was super sensitive. As my husband, like, he could say one thing and I would just be in tears and like felt like he wanted to have a fight with me. I was just so moody. It's so emotional. And I couldn't really understand why, because I'm normally like, I mean, when I'm on my period, I'm moody, but I'm not like a crybaby. Like, I'll cry. Like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like, I'm moody, I'm emotional, but it's not as heightened as this one was. and like my boobs were killing me. My breast pain was severe. I was just so tired. I was like, I don't know what's wrong with this cycle, this period, but it didn't feel good. So I don't know why. I'm like, my mom was like, call your doctor. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna call my doctor. I'm gonna call someone. I'm gonna go in and get help. But like I went and got a pregnancy test. So I got the clear blue version, like the digital one. So I bought that, or it was the off-brand clear blue, but it was a digital pregnancy test because I would just rather see the word than to be seeing if lines are faint, not faint, strong. No, I just rather see the word. So I got the pregnancy test, and like I peed in a cup, and mind you, I was still bleeding, so like my pee was like red because of so much blood. Like I was still heavily bleeding. And so this was probably the 10th of September. So I dipped the pregnancy test in there, and I was on FaceTime with my husband. Just like, yeah, my tummy still hurts, and get me a heating pad. He was at the store, and so I'm waiting on the test. I didn't tell him that I had gotten the test. Because I didn't think that it would be positive. I just didn't think like I had the IUD in. I don't know. I just didn't think that it would be positive, and it was positive. And so like I would just looked at that test like in shock, because what? I never had any like pregnancy scares or anything while my IUD was in. So I just started freaking out on the phone with him. I'm like, Eric, like I'm bleeding, and this test is saying that I'm pregnant. And he was like, just take another one. I'm like, okay. So we hang up, and I took another one, and that one was positive. So I'm like freaking out because I knew something was bad. Like, if this is saying I'm positive, one issue is that the IUD is still in there. The second issue is that I'm bleeding. So when he got home, I decided that we would go to the ER. So we packed up the kids and everything, and we went to the ER. But I ended up not being seen that day because we had the kids with us, and because of COVID, it can only be 2 visitors. It can't be minor children. You can't have children with you in the ER. And I don't know why I didn't think of that. I was just in a panic. But so I was just like, I'll come back tomorrow, because I was really scared and I didn't want to be by myself. So I said that I would come back the next day when my husband could come with me. But I mean, I ended up getting anxious, and I went the next day by myself. And I told them that I had positive pregnancy tests, but I was bleeding. So this was in the ER. They took me to the back, and they did transvaginal ultrasound, and they did a tummy one. They did all that. They gave me a blood test. They gave me, I had to give a urine sample, and everything came back positive that I was in fact pregnant. They would not show me the ultrasound screen. But I ended up getting another one. And the lady, she turned the screen to me and told me, you know, this is where your baby is. And so I saw the baby on the screen. Well, I saw the little baby in my uterus on the screen, and I was still bleeding. And so they just said, you know, we would keep an eye on it. If the bleeding gets worse or you're in a lot of pain, let us know. But as of right now, you are pregnant. And I was about 6 weeks, 5, almost 6 weeks pregnant is what they were thinking based on the size of the little dot on the screen, which is the baby, that little tiny little dot on the screen. They thought I was about 5 to 6 weeks pregnant. And so they sent me home, and I went home, and I had some really strong early pregnancy symptoms, like bad constipation. I was still very tired. My breasts were still very sore. And they assigned me to a new OB because the OB that I had for my 2 other kids had retired. And this was a different hospital. She was at a different hospital, and when I went to the ER, so I just decided, like, I'll switch my primary OB. So they gave me like a list, and I picked out a new OB. And then I had an appointment set up with that OB, but that OB right away listened to my situation. Oh, and then I forgot to add that when they did the ultrasound, the transvaginal ultrasound, after they did that and they showed me that there was a baby in there, like an actual baby in there, they brought in the on-call resident OB to remove the IUD. So the IUD was removed that night, in an attempt to try to save the baby, because they thought that because IUDs, like, it's common for you to get ectopic pregnancy, so they were like, it's probably an ectopic pregnancy, and the baby's not in your uterus. But when they saw that the baby was in my uterus, they pulled the IUD out. They took it out. So fast forward, I got a new OB, and I had my appointment with her that Monday, because I think this was a Friday. Yeah, this might have been a Friday. So she told me before my appointment to go and do lab work, to see if my HCG had doubled, because if it had doubled, then that means that it was a viable pregnancy. So I forget what level I was when they tested me in the ER, but when I went to get my blood work done, it did double, so that they were hoping that it was a viable pregnancy, and then I would move forward with the new doctor that I had found. So I think I stopped bleeding for like one day, and this maybe was like the 11th. So I've been bleeding from like the 1st, the 2nd to the 10th, just 8 days. I stopped on the 11th, and then it came back on the 12th, and it was like going in and out, but it was very light. It came on the 12th, and it was going like very light. I still had all my symptoms and everything. I think my HCG level was at like a 17 or an 1800. So they thought that everything was fine. By September 15th, I coached cheerleading, so I went to the girls' cheerleading practice and ended up having this huge gush of blood. So the bleeding in between the 11th and the 14th was light spotting. And then on the 15th, it just it was like, I was so embarrassed. It's like a huge gush. Like, I was in my workout clothes and everything, and there was like a huge gush of blood. And so my friend agreed to meet me at the ER. She took my kids, so my kids were with me, and they were like scared, like, Mom, what's happening? So I was just trying to stay calm. So my friend came and picked them up from the hospital, and my husband met me there, and we waited in the waiting room while I was actively bleeding for like 4 hours almost. When they called my name, they told me that my husband could not come back with me. There was no space. So they had me kind of in this pathway in like a hallway, because there were no rooms available. I waited in that hallway for maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours. And the cramping began to increase. The gushes of blood began to increase. My husband ended up just like, I'm gonna go home and get you some new clothes and come back. So he brought me clothes back, and I was able to get changed, but it had become so heavy to like where I was walking to the bathroom, and like they didn't give me anything. You would think that they would give me like a pad, or they didn't give me anything. They put like this, like a puppy pad. You know how you put a puppy pad down for like your puppy is training? They put a puppy pad down on the chair, in that hallway and just told me to wait. And I was like, is anybody coming? You know, I'm in a lot of pain. I felt lightheaded. I had a headache. And like walking back to the bathroom to change my clothes, like the blood was like dripping down my legs. And so like I was leaving a trail of blood in the hall on the way to the bathroom. And I stopped one of the nurses and was like, I'm getting blood on the ground. And so they cleaned it up, and she gave me a pack of wipes to clean myself up with. And when I was changing, it was hard in the bathroom because like I didn't want my feet to touch the ground. I just didn't feel like it was clean. I don't know. But like as I was in the bathroom changing, it was still heavy flow. And at that point I began to see clots, like huge clots falling out. And like it was just very traumatic and scary, because I knew that I was pregnant, but then I knew like in that moment that I was probably losing the baby. And I FaceTimed my husband, and we were sad. It was just very traumatic, and I was tired, and my emotions were all over the place because like I wasn't even expecting to be pregnant. And so with this happening, and just kind of like the hospital staff being so crashed and so busy, they were not able to give me the care that I felt like I needed. And like, no, I'm not mad at them, but it would have just been a little bit helpful. So I got changed and I went back to the little hallway. My husband brought me pads and stuff, so I was able to put on pads to soak up the bleeding. And then I waited in the hallway for like 40 more minutes, and they were like, we have a room for you. And I'm like, well, can you get my husband? He's in the hallway. They went to go get my husband. And then of course they had me undress and everything, undress and all that good stuff. And they came and they did the ultrasounds again, and they took my blood again. They took another urine sample, and then about 2 hours later, because I have like the health app on my phone so I can see my lab results, 2 hours later it popped up on my phone, and like the little note that was in there said that my HCG level had dropped to a 200. So I was at a 1700 the day before, and well, probably based on my test results. And then by the time I had gotten to the hospital room, sorry, it's my son. By the time I had gotten into the hospital room, like the actual emergency room, it went down to a 200. And I told my husband, this was before the doctor came in, I showed him, and we just were like, it was a very somber moment. It was sad. It was sad because like after they told me that the baby was in there, and that my levels were doubling, I just thought, because I mean, I guess I heard that women had bleeding in early pregnancy all the time. So I don't know. I just thought that maybe it would still be okay, and this was just, I had an issue. But seeing the test results kind of like confirmed that I was losing the baby. And I was just sad because like I had 2 healthy pregnancies before, so I just kind of became naive, and I took for granted how precious it was to carry a baby. And I didn't think that it would happen to me. I know that sounds very bad. Like, I didn't think that it would happen to me since, like, I had healthy pregnancies and healthy births. And I guess I would call myself low risk, you know? And so I didn't think that it would happen to me. So I was just really shocked and thrown off, and let down because I had gotten excited that maybe it was a viable pregnancy. Yeah, they showed that the level had decreased, and they put in a little note that the whatever they found in my uterus, they called it a baby or whatever, was gone. So the nurse came in, or the doctor came in, and they just were like, yes, you are miscarrying, etc., etc. And so we left, and I was still bleeding. I still bled for like 5 to 6 days after that. So I was bleeding from like the 2nd of September all the way to like the 21st or something like that. So a long time. So after that, I was still bleeding. So I decided to call my OB, and then I told them that I was still bleeding. Like, I ended up losing the baby, and when I went into my appointment, I had stopped bleeding by then, and so she had me do more labs. And it's so crazy because this was maybe like 2 weeks after, or a week after, everything had confirmed. So the 15th, they confirmed that I was losing, or had lost the baby, and told me my HCG levels. A week later, I went to my OB, and she did another lab, and my HCG levels had gone up. So she was saying, so no, yeah, like the bleeding had stopped, and then like my husband, we did whatever we did. But then like a week, so my timeline is so wonky, guys. I'm trying to figure it out. So there was like maybe 2 to 3 weeks before I saw the new OB. Okay, that's right. That's right. And so, yes. And so I stopped bleeding finally at like the 23rd. And then I was able to get back to my normal life. I felt good as far as my health, you know. And so my husband and I were able to, you know, be active or whatever. But then I went to my OB, and she took my blood, and she said that my HCG levels had gone up. And so I told her, like, we were not trying, but we were not, I guess, preventing. And so she was wondering if it was a new pregnancy. And like over the course of 3 weeks, I literally went every 48 hours to get blood work done, and my HCG continued to increase. And to the point where I was like in the 800s, but it was going up super slow. It was not doubling. It was going super slow. And so my doctor was like, maybe this is a new pregnancy, and this one is stuck in your tubes because of the level at which your HCG is going up, which they told me that I either needed a DNC, or if there was a baby in the tubes, that I would have to have a tubal removal. And so they did this ultrasound, and they looked at my uterus. They tested my blood, which had, my HCG had gone up. So they're doing the ultrasound and all this stuff. And I was getting pricked like every 2 to 3 days. So I was just tired of going out to the hospital. And mind you, this has been going on since September 1st. This is now in October. So it's just really stressful. And I was just very tired. And my husband was tired of seeing me be tired. And you know, my HCG was going up super slow. They did the ultrasound, and the ultrasound came back, and they literally told me. So after the ultrasound, they sent me back out to the waiting room, and they were like, if there's a baby, if there's tissue in your tubes, in your uterus, or if there's a baby in your tube, we need you to stay here, because if we find out, we're going to do the surgery right away, emergency surgery. And I'm like, okay. And so I waited in the waiting room, and the doctor called me while I was in the waiting room, and she was like, your uterus looks pristine. There is no tissue. There is no tissue in your uterus. We did not see anything in your tubes. So we don't know why your HCG is going up. After that, I gave another blood draw, and it went up again. And so then my doctor scheduled me for a DNC to see if that would help. And so I got the DNC done about a week later. And she sent it to the pathologist, or I think that's who it is. And the results came back that all the tissue that they pulled from my uterus was not pregnancy tissue. And so her other option was there was probably tissue then in my tubes. So instead of removing my tube, she was going to give me a shot that stops, if that was a tissue or baby in my tubes. So they gave me a shot that they give chemotherapy patients. She was going to send me to the cancer center at the hospital to get this shot. which stops cell division. And so if there was a baby in my tube, then my body would absorb it. If there was just tissue in the tubes, then my body would absorb it. But that was going to be the option after I got the DNC. So I got the DNC, and the tissue was not pregnancy tissue. And so she was just kind of concerned as to why my levels were going up. And so I had to do another blood draw, and thank God this time my levels had drastically decreased. So I was at like a 900, and it went down to like 170. And so this is good. So that means like there's light at the end of the tunnel. And she just says, you know, now we wait, because the DNC, I think the DNC did something. So it was a miscarriage. She is not sure if there was a second pregnancy. We don't know. But whatever happened, it is going away. My levels are rapidly decreasing. I'm starting to feel like myself again. My emotions are kind of snapping back. But I just wanted to share my story and say, you know, that my heart goes out to all of the women that experienced this. Like, it was just a really long journey, or the women who experience multiple losses, or, you know, having to have a fallopian tube removed. Like, none of that is pleasant. None of that is a good experience. And I'm truly humbled by this experience. And I believe, you know, that we experience certain things so that we know how to deal with and relate to others and comfort others. So I believe, you know, that this was something that I experienced. Because, you know, I never know who I will run across and who I may need to relate to or comfort, or, you know. So yeah, I was really sad that we lost the baby, and my husband was really sad that we lost the baby. But I'm getting my body back healthy, and no, we are not planning for any children in the future. This just happened, and I mean, if we have more kids in the future, I would be so happy and grateful for our little rainbow baby. But if it doesn't happen, like, we're okay too. So yeah, we're just healing, and it really drew us closer together to each other. But yeah, that was my story, my experience. I think people often ask, like, I was looking up my experience with the DNC. It was not bad at all. They gave me an IV, they gave me this mask with oxygen, and then I believe, like, the last thing I was saying to them was like, whatever's in this IV, you know, it's burning my arm. And the guy was like, oh yeah, that's just the medicine. And the next thing you know, I woke up in the recovery room. So it was really fast. And then for like 2 days I was super tired, and then the first day I had some bad cramping, but that was literally it. After that, I didn't have cramping anymore. And if I did, it was very mild, and I was able to take like ibuprofen or Tylenol, and I didn't feel a thing. But I had spotting, super light spotting for like a week. And I'm still, you know, working with my OB just to make sure I can get my levels back down to a pre-pregnant state, so that I can kind of get back on schedule on, you know, having regular menstrual cycles and all that. So yes, that is my miscarriage story, and I hope that, you know, it was of encouragement to someone else to, you know, share your story as well, and that you're not alone, and that miscarriage is very common, and IUD pregnancy is, I don't know, not that common. People were like, oh, so you're the girl. So I don't know how common that is, but when I got the IUD, they were telling me, like, it's one of the most effective. You have maybe like a point something % chance of getting pregnant, but I'm thinking I should probably go try the lottery, because, like, I got pregnant with the IUD. Like, I was so shocked. But yes, that's my story. And yeah, I hope that it helped, and it was at least a little bit comforting to someone out there. If you're going through this, my heart goes out to you, if you've had multiple miscarriages and multiple losses, my heart deeply goes out to you, and my sympathy, because it is not easy. It's not easy. So yeah, that was my story. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe, make sure you like, make sure you comment, do all that good stuff. But yes, thanks. I'll see you guys in the next video.